It started with a smirk. Colin Jost, live on Saturday Night Live, looked straight into the camera and dropped the line that sparked a firestorm. Apparently, one of the terms in Trump's new UK trade deal is that we send Meghan Markle back, but only if she deletes her entire Instagram again. The crowd laughed hard, but beneath the laughter was something colder, a subtle shot. A reminder that no matter how perfectly polished her image may seem, Meghan Markle's past still lingers, like a shadow. Around the same time, President Trump announced that Britain's only demand in the trade deal was for America to keep those two. A line that drew another round of laughs, but carried a tone that felt pointed. Then came the photos images. From the early 2010s of a woman lounging on a luxury yacht. No name attached, no watermark, but the resemblance was uncanny. Social media lit up. The posture, the glasses, the champagne, the crowd, it all felt too familiar. People began digging. They spotted faces from her early Suits era, caught the vibe. The quiet signs of privilege that didn't quite match the narrative of a struggling actress. It didn't scream hustle, it whispered access. And access like that, critics argue, doesn't land in your lap, it's cultivated carefully. The theory: Meghan didn't fall into royalty. She navigated her way to it, playing the long game through calculated social moves and connections. And that theory stings harder now, as Harry lives abroad. Without a royal title, jobless, distant from his family, raising 2 children across the ocean, trapped in a life many believe wasn't his choice. But this isn't just about a photo, it's about what that photo represents. The widening gap between the story she tells and the version people are starting to believe. Colin didn't stop there. In the same sketch, he described Meghan as someone who constantly rewrites her past to suit whoever she's trying to impress. And that criticism is now echoing across the internet. Reddit threads are exploding, users are compiling receipts. Facial recognition tools are being used on old party pictures. Metadata is being checked and guest lists are being compared. And what's even louder than the evidence is the silence from former friends. Influencers, people who used to praise her publicly, now they're vanishing from the conversation. Posts have been deleted, accounts scrubbed, images quietly edited. It feels coordinated, like damage control on autopilot. And Meghan? She hasn't said a word. No statement, no denial, not even a cryptic post about online hate or misinformation, which is strange, considering how quick she's been in the past to respond, sue, or fight back when headlines didn't suit her. But this time, nothing. And in a world that's always watching, silence doesn't feel like peace. It feels like confirmation. Because when the noise fades and all that's left is stillness, the questions get louder. And as more pieces of the puzzle emerge from digital shadows, what once looked like a chapter starts to resemble a strategy. A strategy that may have finally run out of room to hide. And now the question on everyone's mind is simple: if this part of the story is real, then what else might be? For some, it was the confirmation they had quietly suspected for years, that the Meghan we see today is less a reflection of who she is, and more a polished, scripted performance. The designer gowns, the speeches on compassion and justice, the humanitarian spotlights, they're not random moments, they're carefully packaged moves in a long-running production. But now, as old footage begins to crawl back from the depths of the internet, the cracks in that glossy exterior are getting harder to ignore. One image in particular has become the epicenter of the Stormer group of wealthy businessmen and well-known influencers gathered on the deck of a luxury yacht drifting through the Mediterranean. And in the center of the shot, a woman who looks unmistakably like Meghan. The photo itself isn't scandalous. No one's committing a crime. No one's caught in the act. But the context, that's what's raising eyebrows. The timestamp, the guest list, the overlap with key names and locations. From her pre-royal life, it's all just a little too aligned, a little too tidy to be coincidence. And the fact that this image, like so many others, quietly vanished from public view years ago only deepens the suspicion. Then came the whispers theories of wiped social accounts. Sudden silence from old friends, NDAs quietly signed in the background as she transitioned into royalty. People noticed that after her engagement to Prince Harry, pieces of her digital footprint didn't just fade, they vanished entirely. Not just a few harmless posts, but whole identities. People she once seemed close to, fellow actors, stylists, social figures gone quiet, gone missing. And that silence, starting to echo louder than any headline. Even longtime fans, the ones who once praised her rise, are finding it hard to explain the growing gaps in the story. The tale of a self-made woman who shattered royal expectations is beginning to unravel under the weight of what looks increasingly like a dual life. Was she simply a misunderstood actress chasing her dream? More something far more deliberate? That's the question haunting every comment section and podcast right now. And then comes the darker undercurrent, the Prince Andrew connection. A rumor that once lived only in conspiracy corners is now making its way into mainstream conversations. A blurry image, a familiar silhouette at an old party. A network of questionable acquaintances, it's all being picked apart like a true crime mystery. There's no hard proof, nothing concrete. But that's the thing, it's not just about evidence anymore. It's about patterns. And the pattern is what's disturbing. Critics argue that the Meghan, who now stands for truth, openness, and accountability, should be the first to answer questions when her past resurfaces. They point out how quick she's been to correct the narrative before even launching lawsuits over minor misquotes. But when these yacht rumors come back, silence, no denial, no honest conversation, not even a vague response to set the record straight. And in today's world, transparency isn't optionally. I expected that silence doesn't read as grace. It reads as control. And the timing, it couldn't be worse. Just as she attempts to rebrand with glossy interviews, lifestyle, ventures, and a reinvented public image, the internet is peeling back the layers, dragging out everything she likely hoped was buried. What looked like a rebranding is now being seen by many as a cover-up. Her message of empowerment, once applauded, is being reframed as manipulation. The same voices that cheered her for breaking royal norms are now wondering if they were simply watching a masterclass in image management. And it's no longer about just one photo, it's about the flood of questions that photo unleashed. Why were these images deleted? Why are her old friends nowhere to be found? Why is she silent now when she never used to be? Each unanswered question leads to more, and in the silence, the internet starts connecting the dots on its own. The narrative takes shape, built on deletion, mystery, and a past that refuses to stay in the dark. Colin Jost wasn't just cracking jokes for applause. That SNL bit did what no headline or press release ever could, fractured the carefully constructed public image of Meghan Markle in real time. And the audience laughed, yes, but it was the kind of laughter that stings, the kind that comes not from surprise but from recognition. Everyone watching suddenly felt like they were all in on the same secret, like something unspoken had just been said out loud. A royal figure who once felt untouchable had been reduced to a punchline on one of the world's biggest comedy stages. And once the jokes land on late-night television, it's no longer gossip, it becomes culture. The backlash didn't stay locked inside internet echo chambers either. It started spilling into mainstream media. Not the photos themselves, but the noise around them. Headlines started to shift, using words like unanswered questions, mysterious deletions, and digital cleanup. Even the more sympathetic outlets couldn't ignore it. They didn't accuse, but they hinted gently, cautiously, that Meghan's silence wasn't helping. If anything, it was making things worse. But what really ignited the firestorm wasn't the tabloids or paparazzi yet. Was ordinary people? Citizens with nothing but time, curiosity, facial recognition software. old Instagram archives, and a burning drive to figure out the truth. What they found wasn't explosive. It was persistent. That consistency is what gave the story its teeth. Yacht locations that lined up with check-ins. Guest lists that matched names from her past. Entire web pages that had once existed, now gone without explanation. It wasn't one damning revelation, it was a web of small but suspicious threads. That felt too neatly connected to dismiss. But even more revealing than the digital trail was the sudden shift in the people around her. Former co-stars who once gushed about working with Meghan now sidestepped questions. Stylists and influencers who used to tag her in photos now acted like they never knew her. Some, it's rumored, signed NDAs. Others just vanished. And when people start going quiet like that, it usually means there's something they've been told not to say. Behind the scenes, whispers are growing claims that Meghan's team is scrambling. That SEO experts are working overtime to bury old content, that glowing articles are being seeded across media, and that platforms are being asked to scrub tags and blur names. But in 2025, that's like trying to mop up the ocean. Every effort to erase only fuels the idea that there's something to hide. And that's where the real problem begins: perception. Because once people suspect a mask is being worn, they don't stop at one question, they begin questioning everything. The speeches, the interviews, the advocacy, the love story. Was any of it real, or just the final act of a long, well-crafted campaign? It's not that the public expects perfection, they expect honesty, authenticity, especially from someone who branded herself as the outsider, the truth teller, the one who brought realness into the royal family. If Meghan had simply said, "Yes, I lived differently before this. Yes, I knew powerful people. And yes, I've changed," people might have respected that. But the refusal to address it at all, choosing silence over honesty, creates something more dangerous than scandal. It breeds mistrust. This isn't just a one-time controversy. It's a slow unraveling of credibility. It's one deleted photo, one dodged question, one carefully staged appearance at a time. When you build your brand on transparency but answer real scrutiny with polished PR people, notice. Because Meghan wasn't supposed to be the problem. She was supposed to be the symbol of change, resilience, authenticity. But now, she's starting to look less like a revolution and more like a case study in how image control can collapse. Not because she had a past, but because she keeps pretending it didn't exist. And in the court of public opinion, that's the one thing people don't forgive.